Hello, it's Tom from Adam's Apples Nursery in Devon. I'm going to do a video today on the best way to plant your bare-rooted fruit trees. We're going to plant an apple tree, a maiden apple tree, but the principle is the same for all fruit trees. And it's the beginning of February here, so it's an ideal time for planting bare-root trees. So the tree's been sat in a bucket of water for about an hour, just so that the roots rehydrate. And you'll see the size of the root system here. It's quite a big root system. We're going to dig a hole about 30 to 40 square centimetres and about 20 to 30 centimetres deep. Basically a hole big enough that the roots can comfortably sit, and deep enough so that the finished soil level is just about an inch or so, 3 or 4 centimetres above the topmost root. So we're going to dig a square hole rather than a circular hole, about 2 or 3 spits wide. Spit is the width of your spade. You can see I'm just going around the edge here first. This is the way I like to dig my square holes. Then across the middle. And then that means you can get out a nice lump of soil like that from both sides. And the reason I do that is because I like to strip the turf off the top of the lump of soil that I've dug out, and then we can add the turf to the bottom of the hole, mince it up, and that will feed the tree in the coming months. And then we can carry on digging out the rest of the soil from the hole. So I've dug my hole, the turf's here, one side, got the spoil that came out of the hole on the other, lovely friable condition. If you wanted to, you could add a handful of bone meal to this at this point, or mycorrhizal fungi. Today I'm not going to do either, but if you've got it to hand, then it's a good thing to do. I've dug my hole. The tree roots are quite big, so it's also not a bad idea to prune back some of these roots, the bigger ones. It actually encourages them to then put out more fibrous roots, which are the feeder roots. It doesn't do them any harm at all. That fits nicely now. All the roots are radiating out. They're not curled around, and that's why we like a nice square hole rather than a circular hole, because the roots can get out into the corners. One thing I will say is that at the moment the hole's too deep. If we put the soil back in now, the tree's going to be buried below that graft union. As I said before, the finished soil level wants to be just above the topmost root, an inch or so, a few centimetres above the topmost root. So that tree wants to be brought up a bit, and we're going to start that by putting in the turf upside down at the bottom of the hole and mincing it up, and see if that gives us a bit of height in the hole. So we've minced up the turf at the bottom, and that's brought the depth of the hole up a bit. So now you can use a stake or a spade or anything to check where that finished soil level is, and that's about right. The soil level will be about there, which is just a little bit above those topmost roots. The roots are splaying out nicely, radiating out. The next thing to do is to put the stake in. So the stake wants to go on the windward side of the tree. Prevailing wind comes from the southwest, which is that direction. So you bang the stake in off centre between the tree and the prevailing wind, and you can either bang it in at an angle. I tend to do it upright just because then the rabbit guard and the tree tie work a bit better together. So I'm going to take the tree out before I bang the stake in, but you want the tree to be just a couple of inches, about 5 centimetres away from the stake. So move the stake to the right position. Careful not to damage the roots when you're doing that. It's going to be about there, I think. Take the tree out and then bang in the stake. There we go. It wants to be about 30 centimetres, 40 centimetres in the ground, so that it's fairly secure. It can wiggle around, but it wants to be nice and secure. So then we can offer the tree up again. That should be about right. And now we can start to bring that soil back. So you want to get about half of the soil in, and remember, give it a good shake up and down. And once you've got about half of that soil back in, crumble it up a bit. It's not, the lumps are different sizes, but once you've got about half of it in, you can then use your heel to tamp it down and make sure it's nice and firmly in the ground. The idea with that is to get rid of any air gaps and get good soil contact around all the roots. You should be able to, at this stage, give the tree a tug and it shouldn't pop out. If it pops out, then you need to do it again. So, soil's back in the hole, and you can just check and make sure that that graft union, the point at which the variety has been grafted onto the rootstock, is well proud of the top of the soil level. So you can see there, it's a good few centimetres above, it's not buried, it's been planted to the right depth. So the next thing is to add a rabbit guard. It's always worth adding a rabbit guard, even if you don't think you've got any rabbits, because if you find out you do have rabbits and you haven't put a rabbit guard on, it can be a sorry old beginning to your day. So these are spiral guards. You can also use flex guards, which are more like rigid plastic mesh, but either are fine. They're about 60-70 centimetres tall and they wrap around the tree. You can see in this instance that there are a few branches at the points at which growing out of the stem where the rabbit guard wants to go. Simple solution, prune them off. You don't need any of these down here. You want a nice clean stem so that the spiral guard can just wrap around the tree like that. Good idea to have the label out so you can remember what the tree is. And then the last thing is your tree tie. Now these rubber tree ties work in a figure of 8. So they go through one like that. And then round the top of the stake, and through the other side. It wants to be really nice and tight so that the tree can whip around like that, but it's not rubbing against the stake. You have to come back and constantly check these in case the tree tie's popped off, and then it can whip around. If the tree tie comes off, or if the tree tie slips down the stake, then the tree can blow around and get hit on the top of the stake, or hit the top of the stake and get really damaged. So you have to keep your eye on these. There's no point in just walking away from it once the job's done and thinking you never have to check them again. Regular checking of the tree ties is really important. But that's now nicely protected against rabbits and voles actually. No good against sheep. You have to see our other video on how to build a sheep guard for that. But the tree's nice and secure to the stake and job's good. What I would recommend now is using a mulch. So if we don't mulch around the tree after we've planted it, the grass will grow soon in the spring, and the grass is a real bully for water with young trees. So we want to keep that grass away from the bottom of the tree, at least for the first year or two. The best thing you can do is put down a mulch of wood chip. Oh. This is slightly rotted wood chip. This is about 7 or 8 months old. We tend to recommend putting some cardboard down first. So I'm going to get some cardboard to put down. So we've got some cardboard here. I've taken off any of the plastic tape, we don't want that. So just some, about 1 metre square of cardboard. Put that there. And then we can cover it with a nice woodsy mulch. A wheelbarrow or so will do. If you've got more, then don't be shy, more the better. So you don't want to bury the tree in mulch, you need a bit of a space around the bottom of the tree, but the mulch nicely evenly spread around. You could do twice as much as this actually if you had it. as long as you're not burying the tree. Now the idea of the mulch is, as I said, stop the weeds from growing back so quick, stop the grass from growing back. It retains moisture in the ground as well if we go into a very dry late spring, early summer. And slowly as this breaks down, it will feed the tree. It will improve the soil structure. So after we've planted it, we've got to think about formative pruning. We have to make a decision about whether we want to prune the tree or leave the tree. Now what that comes down to is where you want the first branches to form. If you've got a single stem like this, a maiden whip or a maiden tree, and you want the first branches higher than the tree is already, then you would do nothing. You would just leave the tree and the terminal bud will continue growing next season and branches would form higher up. If, however, you want your tree to start branching about 1 metre, 1 metre 20, something like that, then you are going to have to make a pruning cut just slightly higher, a few buds higher than where you want those first branches to form. So in this instance, we would choose a bud maybe 3 or 4 buds higher than the first branch. So we would choose this one and we would cut on a sloping cut just above the bud, like that. And so the act of cutting that off, and we've cut off about probably 1/4 of the height of the tree. The act of pruning it back like that is going to encourage these buds just below it to branch out on a horizontal plane. And so that's how we form our first branches. If we wanted a bush tree, a very low stem with low horizontal branches, you would be pruning it right back down here, which is absolutely fine if that's what you want. But I'm happy with a tree that branches at about 1 metre or so. So pruning it back just a few buds above is all you need to do.